The history of the Ottoman Empire is rich and complex, filled with moments of immense power, cultural achievements, and at times chilling brutality. One aspect that often stirs both fascination and horror is the array of punishment methods used during its reign. These methods, while brutal by today's standards, were not uncommon in the empires of the past. They were often designed not only to punish, but also to deter others from committing similar crimes. In this exploration, we'll delve into some of the most gruesome punishment methods used by the Ottomans, shedding light on the harsh realities of justice in the empire. Eye gouging. Eye gouging, a punishment method as terrifying as it sounds, was often reserved for those who committed serious offences against the state. This method was believed to be a fitting punishment for betrayers and traitors. The idea was not just to incapacitate the individual, but also to serve as a public warning to others. According to Evliya Çelebi, an Ottoman traveller and writer, eye gouging was sometimes carried out in public squares where the condemned would be restrained and their eyes removed using sharp instruments. This gruesome act was intended to render the individual powerless, both literally and symbolically, stripping them of their ability to see the world and thus participate fully in it. The loss of sight was also seen as a fate worse than death for many, further amplifying the severity of this punishment. Beheadings. Beheadings were one of the most common and significant forms of execution in the Ottoman Empire, utilized for a wide range of crimes, particularly those seen as threats to the state or acts of severe betrayal. Beheadings were typically carried out with a swift stroke of a sword or axe, emphasizing the empire's efficiency in delivering justice. The process of beheading was often a public spectacle, drawing crowds who would gather to witness the execution of those condemned. This served multiple purposes. It was a stark warning to others, a reminder of the consequences of defying the law, and a reinforcement of the Sultan's absolute power. One of the most historically significant beheadings in the Ottoman Empire was that of the rebel leader Sheikh Bedreddin in 1420. Sheikh Bedreddin was a former Ottoman judge and mystic who led a rebellion against Sultan Mehmed I. His movement, which called for social and economic reforms, gained a significant following, particularly among peasants and disaffected segments of society. The rebellion, however, was perceived as a direct threat to the stability and authority of the Ottoman state. After his forces were defeated, Sheikh Bedreddin was captured and brought before the Sultan. Despite his status as a religious scholar and former judge, the severity of his actions left the authorities with no choice but to sentence him to death. His beheading took place in the town of Serres, modern-day Serres in Greece, and it was conducted publicly to serve as a deterrent to others who might consider challenging the Ottoman rule. After a battle, Ottoman forces might decapitate captured leaders or soldiers, displaying their heads as trophies or sending them back to the capital as proof of victory. This gruesome practice served to demoralize the enemy and showcase the Ottomans' military prowess. Falaka. The falaka, a method of corporal punishment, was used extensively in the Ottoman Empire to discipline soldiers, slaves, and even students. This punishment involved beating the soles of the feet with a rod or a stick. Though it might seem less severe compared to other punishments on this list, the pain inflicted by the falaka was intense and could leave the victim unable to walk for days. The falaka was often administered in public, with the number of strikes determined by the severity of the offense. It was a method that left no visible scars, making it a preferred choice for punishments where the goal was to inflict pain without long-term physical damage. This method was seen as a way to instill discipline and maintain order within the ranks of the Ottoman military and society. Hanging. Hanging was another common method of execution in the Ottoman Empire, used primarily for crimes such as murder, theft, and rebellion. Hangings were typically conducted in public spaces, where the condemned would be left to hang as a stark reminder of the consequences of criminal behavior. In some cases, the Ottomans employed variations of hanging, such as the use of hooks or poles, which added to the gruesomeness of the punishment. This method was intended to serve both as retribution for the crime and as a deterrent to others who might consider similar actions. The public nature of hangings also reinforced the power of the state and its ability to enforce its laws through lethal means. Amputation. Amputation, particularly of hands or feet, was a punishment reserved for thieves and those who committed acts of rebellion. Amputation was both a physical and symbolic act, intended to permanently disable the offender and prevent them from committing further crimes. This punishment was carried out in a public setting, often in a marketplace or a square, where the severity of the crime was underscored by the harshness of the punishment. The sight of a thief with a severed hand served as a powerful deterrent, reminding all who witnessed it of the consequences of breaking the law. In the Ottoman judicial system, amputation was seen as a necessary measure to maintain order and protect property. Emasculation, the removal of a man's genitals, was one of the most extreme forms of punishment in the Ottoman Empire, used primarily as a form of political retribution or to punish sexual crimes. This brutal act was meant to completely strip the individual of their manhood and, by extension, their social status and power. Emasculation was not only a physical punishment but also a psychological one, as it deprived the victim of their ability to procreate and continue their lineage. In the highly patriarchal society of the Ottoman Empire, this was seen as one of the most severe penalties that could be inflicted upon a man. Impalement. Perhaps the most infamous and gruesome method of execution in the Ottoman Empire was impalement. This method involved driving a sharpened stake through the body, typically starting at the rectum and exiting through the mouth or chest. This method of execution was not only excruciatingly painful, but also a slow and torturous death that could take hours or even days to conclude. Impalement was often reserved for those who had committed the most heinous crimes. The most infamous figure associated with this method of punishment is Vlad the Impaler, though he was an enemy of the Ottomans rather than a subject. However, the Ottomans themselves were not strangers to this method, using it as a tool of terror to suppress resistance and maintain control over their vast territory.